Hi, I'm Howard Lothrop, host of Echo Partners TV, and I'm here today to talk with you about how to build a better backtest. You know, if you've spoken with me over any period of time or heard me speak or seen any of my materials, you probably know that I'm a big fan of the backtest. In fact, I think that a high-quality backtest might be the most important part of your entire asset liability process. So how do you construct a good high-quality backtest? Well, first you start with a good high-quality forecast. Because what a backtest does is it compares the asset liability model's forecast of interest rate risk and changes to the actual interest rate risk and changes in a given period. So assuming we're looking at a quarterly period, let's talk about how that works. You want to have a line item by line item forecast of the yield earnings for all of your assets and the interest cost of all of your liabilities forecasted over this upcoming period. Now, since we're talking about a static backtest, this assumes that there's no growth at the bank, that the asset liability mix doesn't change, and that there's no management intervention or strategy that changes things appreciably. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the forecast reduces almost directly to your net interest earnings and expenses over the past quarter. So a good starting place, if you don't have a high quality forecast on hand, is to look at your quarterly results from the most recently completed quarter. Then you take this forecast and you look at what are those things that we didn't know. Well, there are three things we didn't know with certainty at the beginning of the forecast period. We didn't know how much the bank would grow. We certainly might plan for growth, or we might have a budget for growth, but the question is, how much did the bank actually grow? So calculate that and gross up or gross down, if the bank shrank, all of your asset and liability line items by the same amount. Next, let's look at how your asset and liability mix changed. You know how it is. Some quarters you might grow your HELOC portfolio more. Other quarters it might be your consumer loans or your CRE. So some of these assets and liabilities will grow while others will shrink. We didn't know that at the beginning of the quarter. So adjust each and every line item by the amount that that line item grew or shrank in the balance sheet over the quarter. Next, let's look at how rates actually changed. Again, we couldn't know this at the beginning of the period. Also, this is much like the asset liability mix in that the yield or interest cost on any given asset or liability line item might be going one way or another, or perhaps growing or shrinking at a different rate for each item. So here again, some might be adjusted upward, some might be adjusted at a faster or slower pace. You must do this on a line item by line item basis for each asset and liability. And so once you complete adjusting for these three items that you couldn't know, you have what we would refer to as an adjusted forecast. Compare this adjusted forecast with your actual interest income, interest expense, and net interest income, again on a line item by line item basis for the quarter you've just completed. You see, the adjusted forecast, once you have evaluated the change in assets and mix and rate, becomes the forecast that your model would have created had it known with certainty all of the things that were unknowable. So when you compare this adjusted forecast with the actuals, what you're left with is what an accountant would call your unexplained variance. It's a measure of the error in your model. Compare on both a percentage basis and a dollar basis the amount of this error on a line item by line item basis. Now you have to use both percentage and dollar basis, because if you just look at percentage, some very small dollar item might go from 0 to 1 and you have an outlandish percentage change. Or you might have, and you have to look at dollars, because you might have a small percentage change, but maybe it's in your loan portfolio and it makes a huge dollar impact on your earnings. Generally speaking, at the end of the day, if your interest income, interest expense, and net interest income numbers on your adjusted forecast are within 10% of your actual numbers, this would qualify as a high quality backtest. Now that you know how to build it, go ahead. And if you need a little help on that, or you just want to see a sample, let me know and I'll send one over to you. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the next episode.